Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Ghost Education 101. Tonight, we have an amazing group of panel guests, I guess you would call them. We've seen them on other shows. They've been on a couple of my other shows as well. But before we get started, Philip, how are you doing?
I'm great. It was 75 degrees today and sunny. Spring is in sight, and I'm very excited.
Yes. We actually had to turn the air on here today.
I had it on at work, yeah, but not at my house, but definitely at work. But man, I'm not a winter person. I do not like winter.
Nope. I'm right there with you. That's why I stick to Florida.
Then I might complain about that around July, maybe, if I was down there. But
so I don't know if you're as excited as I am about tonight. This is a topic we haven't covered on Ghost Ed before.
No, not at all. But I have to say, this is a topic I know nothing about. So I'm going to learn as much as probably some of our audience tonight, because this is something I've never really studied. I have friends here in Georgia that I know that go squatching up in the mountains, but I'm not one for sleeping in a tent. So I've just never been drawn to do that.
Right. And I've talked to them before we went live, and have some information about what I want to cover. And I've already told them that we kind of want to talk about what cryptids are, and almost give like a 101 crash course on cryptids.
That's exactly right. Because, like me, I don't really know anything about, I know like the Mothman and Bigfoot and some of those, but I don't know like how you go about collecting data and evidence for these things. That's what I'm kind of interested in.
Okay. Well, perfect. Well, before I keep babbling and we keep talking back and forth, the next thing we know, 2 hours is up. I'm going to bring everybody into the show. So welcome Barnaby, Rez, and Bobby Dizzle.
Hey, everyone.
Thanks for joining us.
We're doing it. We're live.
We're here.
Yep. We did it. And I do know some people were looking forward to having Nigel Wright on, but he can't be here today because of an emergency that he has to take care of. Todd is just getting home, so he may join us late. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to make it or not. And then also Britany had a conflict in her schedule, so she's not able to be here. But I'm so glad to have everybody else here. And before we actually get started in talking about cryptids, can you guys kind of introduce yourselves? And I always ask this question. I know it's a lot, but why made you go into cryptid research?
Top right.
Yeah, I was going to say, on my screen, we can start with Barnaby.
I love that name too, by the way, Barnaby.
Thanks, I got it for my birthday.
Name.
My name is Barnaby Jones. I am the founder and lead investigator for Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society based in Wisconsin. I am also an author and the host of pretty much 3 podcasts, Whispers from the Dark, Monsters on the Edge, and debuting April 4th, only on the Untold Radio Network, will be the Paranormal Spectrum. So we also have our YouTube documentary series, which covers everything from paranormal to Bigfoot to UFOs to anything in between. And we release episodes pretty much every month right now. So you can check that out at Wisconsin Caps. That's me.
Caps.
Yep. Well, I'm Bobby Resnick Calkins. I'm also a member of Cryptids, Anomalies, and Paranormal Society. Stockbridge, Muncie, Banner, Mohicans, enrolled member of the tribe, paranormal investigator, cryptid investigator, and pretty much most everything I've learned from cryptids has been through Barnaby and through the team.
Is it my turn now?
Yes, it's your turn.
Okay, I was not so bad. Hey, I'm Bobby Dizzle. I didn't start the podcasting to do cryptids. Honestly, I was always interested in them. I just wanted to have an interesting podcast. I used to have people on. Local musicians, stand-up comedians. And of course, I had ghost hunters on as well. And it just kind of morphed into the only people I could get to come on regularly were cryptid people, paranormal people, aliens, because they love to talk. If you haven't noticed.
Yes.
And it's not the best thing, because what's the first rule of podcasting? If something works, you double down. Mm-hmm. And so I did that. I mean, I changed my name. It was the Bobby Dizzle Podcast. And now it's Caffeinated Cryptid, because my thing was I would drink like Colombian grade coffee and just get like out of my head talking and just excited and have these conversations with these amazing people. And so I'm just Caffeinated Cryptid. I don't really do research. I consider myself the combat reporter of the paranormal. I'm not in. Can I cuss on here?
I won't tell.
Yeah,
I'm not in.
we've had worse.
I'm not in, but I'm like adjacent. I'm wearing the blue helmet, the blue vest. I've been squatching in Georgia. I've been to haunted hospitals. I put in the time, and I've done my research. I have witnesses. I have cryptozoologists like Barnaby. He's been on. I'm sure Mr. Rez will be on eventually. He's now 1 degree from Bobby Dizzle, so he's now part of the club. And Heather's been on.
Love.
Heather's been on.
I had a blast on the show.
Oh yeah, I don't know how long that show went. Like it's one of those. Like, oh crap, it is daylight again. And but yeah, I love talking about it. Hearing eyewitnesses, and the problem with a lot of eyewitnesses is some of them can be crazy, and so I've had to pull up on the stick a little bit, and I have on biologist and anthropologist. I had a paleontologist on last week. I love talking dinosaurs. And of course, we went in Gigantopithecus. And I've had several of those. The guy I'm having on this week did his dissertation on Neanderthal teeth. And so I'm studying like the breadth of it, from the real world, the woo, to the scientific and everything in between. Just if you got a good paranormal story, I'm here to hear it. And I always bring the best foot forward. If it's a bad video, I'll just take it off YouTube. That can never happen.
I've done that before.
Yeah, the thing ends and you're like, delete, get out. You never happen. Go. It's the Pruder film style. You don't exist.
Yep, total train wrecks. But before we get started, the one thing I believe, Barnaby, you were volunteered by the other podcast or by the other guest to answer this question. But for someone who had no idea what a cryptid is, how would you define it?
Cryptid is from Greek, meaning hidden, and Latin for zoology is the study of animals. So cryptozoology is the study of hidden animals. It's basically any animal that was around and is now thought to be extinct, and we still find creatures like relic populations of them still around the world, or creatures that are rumored to exist but have not been completely proven by modern science. So things like the gorilla, the platypus, the okapi, all are cryptids at one time. They were all talked about to be existing by their native cultures and so forth, and it wasn't until science actually went out and brought back a type specimen that they were actually proven to be existing. So we see a lot of that, like the Tasmanian tiger, the thylacine, where you still have a lot of sightings of these things on trail cameras and photographs and stuff, but modern science has considered these things extinct, so they would be considered a cryptid. And then you have other things like Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, and other more, there's still fossil records and scientific evidence backing their existence, but there is not that body, on the lab table that says that they do exist.
Mm-hmm.
Is the Mothman in the cryptid category?
Mm-hmm.
In a broad sense, yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I have him on my shirt somewhere here. I was trying to find it.
But I included him on the graphic. I thought, I think he's a cryptid. I don't know.
I would say, some people say aliens aren't, which
that was a question I was going to ask earlier. If they're reptilian, would they be a cryptid? If aliens, some they say that they're reptilian. So it's like, well, that's an animal, but they're intelligent because they're smart enough to fly a spaceship. So I didn't know where they fell.
I would say you'd be within your rights to say, if you're discussing cryptids, to bring it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
Any kind of animal, it's all zoology. We're an animal, so we fall under that category as well. So any kind of biological animal would fall under zoology, which is the study of animals. So
I had that list pulled up of all the animals that used to be cryptid, but you ran through them pretty well. I didn't know the kangaroo used to be a cryptid. That makes sense. Because like a giant boxing deer, I would think, that's not true. That doesn't exist.
Right?
It's a deer with fists? No, get out of here. You're on the grog. You have too much grog.
And real quick before I forget, one thing I know I wanted to make sure I touch base on is Rez. You've been on my show a couple times, and we've talked about your cryptid experiences on the reservation.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that there's more activity there just because of what happens on the reservation, or
I think it's a fair mix, but I believe in my thoughts and what I've experienced from other people I've talked to along the Native communities that they feel more safer. Feel safer because they're not constantly someone there to go looking at it. It's federally protected land. And with it being in our culture and in our history and everything else, that we're taught to basically leave them alone, not to mess with them, let them chill in the forest, do their own thing while we do our own thing. Where when you come off the reservation, anybody can come up on them lands and start looking for them.
Is there a particular reservation or area of the country? You don't have to say the reservation, but is there somewhere in particular that you found that's more active?
No, I've talked to other tribal members across the country, and from what I've been getting, at pretty much anywhere there's a nice wooded lands where they can eat and fresh water, there we can pretty much find them.
We know, the Native Americans, in the past and present too, are so spiritual and have such a connection to earth and nature that I wonder if there's some kind of telepathy with possibly a Sasquatch, Bigfoot with the Native Americans. I've often wondered that if there's some kind of communication spiritually.
Not necessarily spiritually, but there has been some that have told me that they've had messages that they're basically receiving telepathy wise. Yeah. So I have not experienced that this time, but who knows what might happen in the future.
Yeah, who knows? I talk to dead people, so anything's possible.
Me too.
Welcome to the show, Todd. Glad you can make it. Those photos looked amazing.
It was an interesting day for sure.
Yes. And actually, before we delve into anything further, Todd, do you mind taking a moment to let everybody know who you are?
So my name is Todd Neiss. I am the president and founder of the American Primate Conservancy, a nonprofit organization based on discovery and research, knowledge, recognition, and the detection of the Bigfoot or Sasquatch. Based on science and education. Like I say, we're a nonprofit, and I've been researching for over 30 years, almost 30 years now, since I was initiated into the Bigfoot world rather abruptly. But it's something that changed my life. 25 seconds watching 3 of these creatures during a military exercise, and there were 3 other soldiers who also witnessed this as well. So, it's a long trip.
Yeah, we're having a little trouble here, and
Let me see if I can get my earbuds on. I think I might have.
Yeah. Okay.
I thought there was a dang bomb going off in my headset. I was like, whoa. The thundering outside?
Now, I know one thing that we do want to talk about is just like with paranormal research, you have your investigations and kind of experiments that you test out to try to make contact with the other side. And I'm like, I want to talk about what type of experiments you guys use, but I'm not sure if it was one of you guys that I've had on my show in the past, but someone talked about an experiment that they had with peanut butter jars.
That was me.
Okay.
Yeah. I think everybody had at one point.
That's who I thought it was, but I was like, with my luck, it was Nigel. But if you wanted to kind of talk, I found that kind of interesting. Because was one of the jars like he found empty but sealed back up?
No.
Oh, okay. I might be wrong then.
We started. We hung one peanut butter jar up, and it disappeared. Mm-hmm. And we thought, okay, so something took it. To this day, we have never found any of these jars. I'll make that clear. Every jar that I'm talking about is completely vanished. We've gone over there in the middle of fall, winter, when there's no water, there's no leaf cover or anything. We still haven't found any of these jars anywhere on the property. So private property, 80 acres, Upper Michigan. It's called the Hayden Adventure. And the second jar we hung up, the first one we put like a hole through the rim of the jar. So it's possible that it broke off, fell, rolled away, got carried away, something like that. So the second one we put up there, we literally wrapped around and tied it up so that it couldn't come off. And that one completely disappeared. And we have trail cameras up on those. I believe the first two, we only had one trail camera on them. And there's no pictures, no animals, nothing came into them. So the third one we put up, I'm trying to remember. There's 4. No, I think there's just 3. The third one we put up, we actually put a GPS tracker on it.
Oh, wow.
And we electrical taped it all to the bottom of it. And so it was completely on there. And then we hung that one up. That one, we had two trail cameras on it, watching it the whole time. And we watched as the animals, the squirrels and chipmunks and stuff came and completely emptied it and left it hang there. So we had a fourth jar was on the property as well. That one hung there for several months and nothing touched it. And then one day, all of a sudden, it was just completely gone as well. But that one is way on the other side of the property. But the 3 jars that are missing, we've never found them on the property. If they like fell and got rolled away by a raccoon or a squirrel or something, that still would have showed up on a trail camera, because we know that the animals that did come and lick this one completely out all registered on the trail cameras. We have videos, we have pictures of them eating out of them. So anything that would have been in range would have taken these. But the first 2 completely vanished. The third one with the tracker got left there.
Did you notice any static anomalies or anything on the camera? Anything odd? I was just curious. Okay.
I forgot about you telling me that story. I need to go back and watch the episode. The whole,
yeah,
that
you,
was a good
you
one.
can watch the whole episode on our YouTube channel. It's I think it's episode 1 of Finding Hiding. It's called the Peanut Butter Jars, and it shows pictures of them, video of them, every evidence, so you can see all of it documented right there.
I thought you were talking about that guy. I mentioned Randy in Minnesota that has all the jar lids in the same color. That the one that Jason Humber just did, or Kinsey just did. He just piles of red lids, piles of yellow lids, piles of blue lids, and he didn't put them there like that. To me, that's crazy, like anecdotal evidence to me. That's like something did that could see color and had a hand, just didn't just blow there by wind.
Right. Yeah. And when you were telling me the story and like nothing showed up on the trail cam, the first thing that came to my mind is like Bigfoot out there with a computer hacking your trail cam. Like they're not going to see me. But who knows what they can do. But I don't know. I've actually talked to all these guys before. So Philip, do you have any questions?
Oh, I was curious, some of us, toss around the idea that Bigfoot is an interdimensional being, that it doesn't live on Earth, but it pops in and out of a different dimension. What are your thoughts about that, since you've been doing this for years and years?
Well, personally, I don't subscribe to the paranormal, supernatural side of things. But that being said, I have endeavored lately, mainly because I kind of had to eat a little crow when it came to something that I experienced that I had put in that woo category. And it made me really think that people are experiencing things. They're certainly, these are not anecdotal when you've got dozens and dozens of people claiming to see something. So my thing is, I don't doubt that people saw something, people experienced something. What I would have exception with is perhaps the way they interpreted what they experienced or saw, or felt, for that matter. And so what I've been trying to do lately is kind of stand on that third rail between the mainstream science, with the citizen scientists, if you will, scientific, biological, versus the paranormal, and trying to see if I can't bridge that gap to some extent by acknowledging that people have seen and experienced certain things, and perhaps in their interpretation they may have got it wrong, but see if we can't try to find a scientific reason to explain what they experienced. And I've been working on a number of things, and like what you're just talking about, where people say they shift in and out of dimensions and whatnot. I personally don't believe that, but I have some theories I'm working on that might surprise you. But that's my 2 cents.
Cool.
Personally, I'm part of the woo camp. I'm gonna be honest with you. You think about it, as humans, we only use a very small portion of our brain. We don't use it all. Now, what if they were able to use more of their brain? That's where you get some of the telepathy and all that. Who knows if you unlock the entire brain with training, what can you do? And they're not eating processed foods, which is destroying the body and the brain. As a medium yourself, that when you open up and use more of yourself, things start to happen that normal people don't believe be true.
Yeah.
I'm trying to dive into that scientific and woo middle ground right now myself, with having all the paleontologists and the anthropologists on. Also have eyewitnesses, and I even sat in on a camp last November and asked these real serious people about what we feel about the woo part. He goes, we don't say they can do anything or they can't do anything, but we know what we saw. It's that kind of thing. Like, something's happening. I mean, it could be something as easy as a sleight of hand, David Copperfield style, but something does happen out there. Some kind of electronic manipulation, some kind of mind every once in a while. I mean, it's not saying it's this or that, but something does happen. That's where they're at with it. So that's where I'm at with it.
So my first go-to when somebody makes a claim that this species has certain, let's just say, capabilities that are beyond understanding, which fit the supernatural, paranormal category, that being things that we don't understand. Mm-hmm. But my first go-to is either show me an animal, another species that has this capability, whatever it is you say they can do, whether it's the glowing eyes, whether it's disappearing and appearing out of nowhere, whether it's mind speak, what have you. If you can show me one other example in biology of another species that can do that, great. But otherwise, it seems like, you're kind of pulling it out of your rear and applying it without any, any proof that this sort of a occurrence could happen naturally. And so, but again, going back to that third rail, like you say, Bobby, is I think it's possible to explain some of these things that people are experiencing by, for instance, comparing it to other animals. And I'll give you an example. If you ask anybody and in any audience or what have you, or any setting, what color a polar bear is, they're going to immediately tell you, well, polar bears are white. When the truth of the matter is, a polar bear doesn't have a single white hair on its body. And this is something I've been pressing for a long time. So let's take this particular situation where people say they seem to appear or disappear at will. So the polar bear has these absolutely clear hairs. They're guard hairs that extend just beyond what is actually a tan fur, a blondish tan fur. And it's these clear, absolutely transparent hairs that extend beyond that base coat of fur that will, like fiber optics, it'll absorb the surrounding light and ambient colors around this creature and give it the appearance of being white. A polar bear's skin is actually black, as you can imagine. Its skin is absolutely black. But with this particular gift, if you will, that they have the ultimate camouflage. So one of the things I've been trying to do, I have purchased 1,000 feet of fiber optic wire. Probably about the gauge of say a 50, 60 pound test fishing line, but this is fiber optics. And I've also purchased a full black bear pelt, North American black bear. And in this, as soon as my moving van catches up with me, I just moved out from Oregon to Arkansas. We've been about a month without our stuff. But as soon as it catches up with me, I'm going to continue this experiment where I'm going to take half of that bear hide and infuse these clear fiber optic wires, cable, whatever you want to call it, through the backside of the pelt, just extending maybe a half inch beyond the hairs. It's going to take a long time, as you can imagine. But once I get that situated, I plan to take that hide out into different settings in the forest under different lighting conditions, and just see if half of that pelt, like that of the polar bear, if half of that pelt that has those fiber optic quote unquote guard hairs, if it doesn't absorb the surrounding colors and ambient light around it and make half of that hide just seem to vanish. It, if now there again, we've got an example in nature of something that can do that. So stay tuned. I'll let you know how that experiment works out. But again, this is something that I'm trying to bridge this gap between what people are perceiving and trying to come up with a scientific reason, again, based on examples in nature as to how that happens.
Well, now I'm interested. I work with fiber optics every day. Now I'm going to steal some at my desk and put them in something, check it out, see what I can do.
That sounds like, I love experimenting. That's really cool. I love out of the box thinking like that.
That's
how
the coolest
we
thing.
discover things.
That's the most interesting take I've ever heard on experiment with this stuff, by the way.
Makes me think of that movie, The Invisible Man, that was out a few years ago. The suit that he put on, and it made him disappear because it was reflecting what was around. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
That or like the movie The Predator, the same kind of concept, where if whatever it is standing perfectly still, you may not be able to see it, but if it does move, you are going to see this shimmer of light, of color and shape. And I think maybe that's what's happening. Maybe it's standing there watching them, they don't see it, and all of a sudden, boom, there it is. It could because perhaps it moved. And where did that come from? Oh, it must have came from another dimension, or vice versa. It's moving and then it stops and it disappeared. No, it didn't. It's still there. That's kind of where I'm going.
I've got a question. This is something we paranormal people get railed about, is being scientific in investigating. And, they're like, scientists don't support really paranormal investigators because they haven't proven that a ghost is real. So what techniques do you guys do that you say are scientific to try to find something that hasn't been proven that's there yet? Kind of like us. It's like ghosts don't exist. It's not been proven. You can't make one in a laboratory. So our scientific theories always get kind of poo-pooed away sometimes. But we do it.
Technically, you could make a ghost in a laboratory, but you couldn't see it. You could just kill a dude.
Good one.
I mean,
there it is. Yeah.
I'm just saying, devil's advocate.
Yeah.
This time, send hate mail to Philip.
Any volunteers?
Send it. Yeah, I know how to return to sender. But are there certain protocols that y'all do scientifically when you're out, researching and looking and hunting? Do you follow a certain schedule of protocols?
Well, whenever we go out, we document everything. Every person on our team has a camera, so we have multiple angles of anywhere that we go. So when we go back to an area a week later, a month later, we can look at every tree, every stick, every thing that was out there. So we have proof of what happened. And instead of just the people that say well, if you see something and then you pull out your phone to take a picture, it's too late. With cameras rolling all the time, you have that evidence 24 hours a day, whatever you're doing. And then the same thing is it makes it able to replicate these things. So if you see something, you can form a test. Like a lot of people have these the beliefs about stick structures and whether or not they're made by Bigfoot. Yeah. So we actually had this one area of the woods up at that Hide and Adventure, the private property where we are, and we were able to find a bunch of these stick structures that could have been made by either a person or a Bigfoot. And because we know that the property owners didn't make them, it was either natural or made by one of these creatures. So what we did was we cleared everything out of this area, and we have been monitoring it for the past couple of years to see if anything natural falls and recreates any of the structures that we saw, or if anything is built and we can see that something has come back and done it. And so far, we haven't had either happen in that area, neither natural or rebuilt.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of a negative answer to the question, but at least we know that, you know, if something does show up in there,
Yeah.
we can take a look at it and know that this is something new, and we know when it was put up, we know where and everything, because we've documented it. So.
It's debunking, kind of the same thing that we do.
Well, you bring up a good point, Barnaby, and I, you know, photography is an interesting tool to use, and one of the things that I look at is if somebody takes a photograph or obtains a video of an alleged Bigfoot or Sasquatch, what have you. In today's digital age, cameras, number one, they attach file numbers to each of those photographs. Number two, you can't tell me as an individual that when you went out, that you didn't bother using your camera until that moment that you had that sighting. So I want to see all the photographs. I don't care what it is, if little Bobby down there skipping rocks or somebody fishing or everybody sitting around a picnic table. There's got to be a trail of pictures that preceded that, and perhaps after that. Now I can understand if you got a Bigfoot in the course of a trip out in the woods, you know, you might just, you know, shove that in your pocket and get the heck out of there and not get another shot. But I want to see those shots before, and the same with video. And I can look at those file numbers and know whether they've been taken out of sequence or whatnot. So that's one thing. Okay. Number two, when people take these shots and let's say they get one good shot or maybe even two, and hey, it looks like it could be what they claim it to be. I don't know why people don't generally return to that scene and take another picture a day later, a week later. Because if it's gone, you may have something, you know. And yeah, let's say you were driving down the road, you snapped it out of your car, you know where it's at. You can go back to it, find it, and take another picture a little bit later and see if it's changed. And I'll give you a good example. I have some friends that live in Eastern Washington who had a cabin on the base of Mount Rainier. They were snowmobiling, and they went out. I'm sure a lot of you viewers probably heard of Bumping Lake, which has had a lot of activity just southeast of Mount Rainier. So in the process of their snowmobiling, they were actually returning back to their vehicle. You know, they're both Bigfooters. So one's looking one way or the other's looking the other. And my friend saw some movement out of the corner of his eye. And he hit the brakes and he got his girlfriend's attention and says, I'm backing up, look over there. I think I got something. So they back up and they took a series of about four photographs in sequence, but from slightly different angles. And from every angle I saw, and that included kind of zooming in on it and playing around with the contrast and whatnot. This guy was so convinced that I went out and I purchased a snowmobile and a trailer literally en route to Bumping Lake and met up with them. And we went out the next day and retraced their route. And I'll tell you another little inside baseball is if people don't turn off their geo-tracking on their cameras, you can go into the details of any photograph and you go down and it'll tell you longitude and latitude where they're at. And I actually told this gal, I said, you know, you gave away this where this was at. She said, no, I didn't. I didn't tell anybody. I said, you don't have to. And I showed her how if you've got that geotagging on your phone, it will record your longitude, latitude. It gets you pretty close. So, but we went back and forth at this one spot where I was pretty certain it was. We didn't see it. It changed a little bit. There was snow on the ground now where there wasn't very much when they went through the first time. They kind of gave up on it. Well, 6 months later, I went to Yakima, just east of there for Bob Gimlin's birthday party. And the next day after that party, it's now summer. So 6 months later, I decided to take my truck
up that road, I knew the gates would be open and the roads would be cleared. And I drove up there and drove around, and I got to that spot. I was just so positive that what I'm looking at looked like a Bigfoot leaning out away from a tree, staring at them. And from different angles, it actually kind of looked like it changed up a little bit. Well, I'm driving back, and I've got the camera, my phone on my dashboard with that one of the best pictures of the 4 up, and I've got it in low, 4-wheel low, and I'm just crawling. And this one picture had this one tree that was bent at a certain angle, and I came around the corner, and I'm like, oh, that's it. That's the tree. That's the spot. I didn't even want to look. I got out my truck on the opposite side. I walked around to the hood. I turned around and I looked. 6 months later, that Bigfoot was still there. And I walked back in there. Now I can walk back there because it wasn't 3 feet of snow. And I walked back to where it was. And what it was, there was a big fir tree in front of the Bigfoot. What was behind it was a pine tree about 10 feet behind it that had a huge black burl running all up and down the side of it.
Mhm.
And because of the difference in, here's the fir tree and here's the pine trees. So as you're moving, you're going to get a little different dimensional look at it. And it was the perfect non-Bigfoot. I went out there, I photographed the heck out of it. I went back to their cabin and I said, well, you probably want to sit down. But these people had already done an enlarged photo of this thing and had it framed and put on their wall. So I had to give them the bad news, I said, I found your Bigfoot. And they're like, what do you mean you found our Bigfoot? And I told them the story. I said, I finally found where it was at. And here's some photographs of it today in the summer with no snow. It's still there. And it was a hard pill to swallow. But I told them, I said, use this as a learning experience. You gotta go back and get that backup picture, right? So, if they took that picture around to conferences, they've been known to speak in public venues and just put that up there and said, show of hands, how many believe that's a Bigfoot? I guarantee you probably 90% of them would. And then tell the story. Little humble pie goes a long ways, but you know what? Share your experience and you can show how easy it is to get, let the pareidolia take over sometimes. Yeah. But one of my go-tos when I'm out there is eliminate every other possibility. I don't care if it's something you're looking at or if it's something you've heard or even tree structure. You've got to eliminate any other possible explanation before you can kind of jump the shark and get beyond that and say, okay, well, I've eliminated. Now I can say that it might be Bigfoot related. But until you've done that, you're just kind of wishing something to be what it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. And one question I do have for all of you, I know when I was taking my paranormal studies classes, the instructor made us do forensic science as part of it. So that way we could learn how to collect evidence in the event that we encountered cryptid evidence. Have you guys ever taken a cast of a footprint? Because I know that's one thing that they made sure we knew how to do.
Benny.
Watch what finger that is.
Hey, I'm behaving myself tonight.
In short, I have. Yeah, I've cast numerous tracks. In fact, I found one, I believe, today along the Buffalo River, and I wish it's on my friend's camera. His didn't get wet, but we pulled off on a sandbar on the Buffalo River, and there was in one of the very few spots on that sandbar where it would take a track. We found a pretty good sized track, and I'll try to put that up as soon as I get him to send it to me. In fact, I'll ask him to do it now. But yeah, it's they're out there. They're when I first had my sighting, and it was in an area where I hunted extensively for many years, the first thing that dawned on me was these things exist, and the big question, how could they exist? And I never had seen sign, but having seen them, you kind of it opens your mind to the point where you start, when you do look for evidence, it's pretty surprising how much is actually out there. But again, without having that sighting, I would have dismissed a perfect footprint in the ground as just a odd looking, divot in the ground, and walked on without even thinking twice about it. So, but if you do go in with an open mind and you do your research and you look around, there is plenty of evidence out there. That's for sure.
But go ahead.
We actually had one of my first instances where we had rocks thrown at us. The next day we went across the river, and there was 3 different size footprints over there. We were able to cast a few of them, but the interesting thing is we actually cast what we believe is a handprint as well. And I think another thing to mention on that topic is, whenever somebody's looking for footprints or handprints or what have you, you're looking for these perfect footprints in the ground, and it's not what you're going to find, because if these things go on all fours, you're going to find toe imprints, and you're going to find knuckle imprints as well. And that's why when you say that these trails just disappear or there's a lack of footprints and stuff, it's possible that you're just not seeing what actually happened. So it's just something else to keep in mind.
Would you say that the footprint is the most common evidence for Bigfoot people, or because I don't know if there's been any fur, that's been DNA tested that's come back unknown or anything, but are footprints the most common piece of evidence?
Audio.
Okay.
You have a lot of weird audio and stuff, calls and stuff out in the woods. Probably.
There have been hair samples that have been collected. I've come across a few and had some sent to me. For the life of me, I don't know. I do know that the majority of them have come back identified as known animals. A few years ago, I was with Dr. Brian Sykes, who's one of the he's passed away now, but he was one of the top forensic genetic scientists in the world, and almost practically the father of DNA. And he came out to visit Peter Byrne and myself in Pacific City, and brought a shoebox and had about 50 samples of hair in this shoebox in these clear sealed envelopes. And he had studied every one of those, and some of them are very well known ones, like the ones from Justin Smasia and some of these others that have been around, and he was able to identify every one of them. The problem with getting a good specimen is we don't have a type specimen. So the problem being, you're not going to be able to necessarily identify it to any specific animal. And in fact, best case scenario, it's going to be no match for any animal. We don't have a database put together at this point that we can, compare with. But and the problem too is a lot of this research is very disjointed. You've got all these different groups that operate autonomously and don't communicate with each other. They don't network and share information, and it's too bad. Some of it's personal to some people. Some people don't like other groups. Some people consider it competition, if you will, which is sad, because it's, if we get everybody together and compare notes, we might have solved this by now.
Yeah.
Which is why this is why I put together an annual gathering that's been going on now. This will be our 17th year, called Beachfoot. I don't know if anybody heard of it, but it's a private invitation only gathering of researchers. It's not open to the public. It's not open to the press. It's not open to vendors. We don't make money on it. It's something, the brainchild of mine back in 2008. I just thought about all these folks that I'd met over the years, and vast majority of them a lot smarter than me. And I just thought, man, what it would be like to get them all in one place at the same time. And I just thought, what if I got them to literally get together in a very rural setting, in a camping setting, a format where they can literally spend 3 or 4 days together, get to know each other on a personal level, and bond, around the campfire. That we'd have 3 big bonfires during this event, and that's where people really hook up and share. And Dr. John Bindernagel attended for a couple of years after he got over the whole name Beachfoot, and he said it was one of the better venues out there, just because you don't have the limelight of having to entertain an audience. It's you're surrounded by your own contemporaries, and you're all freely sharing information. And so it kind of took on a life of its own. But I just wish groups would get together. It's like herding cats, everybody's got their own agendas, and they're different kind of categories. But I've worked on a couple different projects where we've tried to do that outside of Beachfoot. One was called Share, which was Sasquatch Hunters Academic Research Exchange, where we're trying to bring people together. Another one you might have heard of is Project Zoo Book, ran by Amy Boo. I've worked with her in the past with that project. Again, that's trying to bridge a gap between the citizen scientists and professional scientists, and we've had some success in that regard. But yeah, I think it's important that people get together and share information, and whether it's hair samples or scat samples even, we might be able to start forming that database and then start getting matches.
I agree.
What I always wondered is you have these anomalous samples of hair that come back, humans something, ape something, and they can't determine them. Well, you should still be able to get enough DNA out of that sample to compare it to the next sample that comes back anomalous, human, ape, whatever it is. And if those 2 anomalous samples match, well, then you're onto something, because you're not just getting a unknown sample, you're getting a unknown sample that matches with other unknown samples. And I think that would go a long way to kind of, help the ball rolling to say that this is another whole species that we're getting this evidence from.
But who's going to warehouse that information? Who's going to be the curator for that data? That's the real issue, and I don't see anybody stepping up to be because what we were talking about doing with Share was doing an open source format, so anybody can contribute anything and anybody can see anybody else's stuff. It's not like we're going to like the BF or where stuff gets stuffed in a secret vault, and only certain people can see it.
The blue form.
Yeah. So you know what I'm talking about. But the cool thing is that the technology is becoming. We're getting a lot more access to technology, and it's becoming less and less expensive for the citizen scientists to afford. I know I've spent tens of thousands of dollars in different kinds of equipment over the years. But technologies like, eDNA, for instance, is fairly new. It was developed by Fish and Wildlife. They could literally, by taking water samples and analyzing them and comparing them with earlier water samples, could tell when a certain species of fish was coming through that area just by the difference in the water. And that got extended into the other eDNA, such as soil samples. In fact, right now as we speak, I was supposed to be joining Dr. Haskell Hart in Oklahoma, where he's currently collecting eDNA from a research area. Unfortunately, I'm still waiting for my damn moving truck to get here, but so I wasn't able to join him. But you can get it from the soil, you can get it from water, and you can actually, I kid you not, you can get it from the air. If you sample air without anything in a particular area, and then sample it again with something in the area, the technology is getting not down to the parts per million, but or even billion, but parts per trillion now. There is a technique out there known as solid phase microextraction, SPME, and that takes it's not actually DNA per se, but it takes samples. Everything breaks down, uh, radioactively. Saying that wrong, but we're always sloughing off skin cells as we sit here and talk. This is how hound dogs can track you. Everything breaks down. It's radioactive decay, and with these with SPME, they've got these special wicks they developed that look like a syringe. This wick, it's a sorbent wick that's enclosed where a needle would be, if you will. And if you find a sample, and in fact, Fish and Wildlife have used it on scat to determine what the and they've got a database, of course, to go with, but what particular animal left this particular scat. And all you got to do, you don't even have to touch the sample. You just expose that wick about 2 or 3 inches away from it for a few seconds. Release the plunger, it pulls it back in. You take it to either an institution that has the equipment to read it, or a lot of universities even have it now, and it's a lot cheaper. But for like $300 or $400, and almost instantaneously, you can get a chemical fingerprint, if you will, of over 90 different chemicals, molecules actually, that it'll break down to the parts per trillion, and so each sample has such a unique signature that they can tell, yeah, this came from a cougar, this cat came from a mountain, a bobcat, this came from a domestic cat, but they've gotten so they can actually tell which cat it came from. Let's say it's 3 domestic cats. They can identify the specific individual now. And they say that they can even determine whether or not they're pregnant or not, just from an air sample over a scat. So the technology is there. It's getting cheaper all the time. People haven't really looked into the solid phase micro extraction, but if you look it up online, those testing wicks are now just a couple $100. Compare that to DNA and how much that costs. So technology's catching up, prices are coming down, and we're getting different views of this. I've been doing this for 30 years, and it blows me away how much that technology has caught up with the common person. Well, we need to use it. That's the main thing.
Have you heard of little Daniel Lee from UK with his eDNA find?
I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, he's 14 years old, and he's like the hottest new thing going in the crypto world, I guess. He's a cool kid in the UK. He did an eDNA on a footprint, and it came back as unknown primate. That was, and just like it went in a mile-long like nature area in England.
Yeah, well, bear in mind, a lot of people don't seem to realize that humans fall into that same category as humans are primates. Simple biology. You get up the ladder till you get right down to it. Humans are primate. So primates range from old world monkeys to different simians and
that's what it was. It came back as old world monkey. It just reminded me.
Or proto-simians or great apes or what have you. It's pretty broad spectrum, but yeah, I've seen that a lot where you get back that there's some primate or simian DNA in there, but like I say, until we get a good database that we can really associate specifically to perhaps an incident that happened at the same time, I just go back to it's very difficult to get all this data centralized and shareable, and it's a shame.
I've got a woo-woo question now. We're going to flip this around. So, Heather will like this. So, you know what tulpas are? Thought form entities.
Yep.
So what's your thought about this could be a tulpa situation where it started out with a story from a long ago and everyone's jumped on board and now they've created this entity, like Slender Man. People see
Man bear.
Slender Man.
Man bear pig.
So
Yeah.
I think that predates a lot of that stuff. I mean, your stories
Mm-hmm.
of the Sasquatch and other things, and the fact that you still have, you know, a viable fossil record of these creatures that, you know, with some of your other stuff that could be thought forms and that I mean, you could have a Sasquatch that is a tulpa, but that's not where the original stuff comes from.
good point.
The problem
paintings
I
are
would have with that is you think it would be societal, right? So, but we're so disjointed between different countries and different societies. And then you look at the time factor and where these reports are coming from. There's reports from Alaska where people have no connection whatsoever with people in the mainland, and they may be centuries apart. So I don't think it's something that, and maybe I'm misinterpreting what this tulpa is that you were talking about, but I don't think people are, and just because of the dissemination between different groups and not just in the United States or North America, but around the world, people are seeing things that seem to have consistencies about them, and yet they're completely disassociated from any of these other cultures that are having similar events. So I don't, again, I might be misinterpreting what you're talking about, but it sounds like people kind of get on board something and it kind of takes on a life of its own. Is that kind of where it becomes kind of a
if enough
urban
people
legend?
believe in it, it becomes real.
Yeah,
it becomes an urban legend, and well, no, I get that.
Yeah.
Now this, you got a question?
I do. There's a couple questions, but I do have one that I want to ask before I forget.
Yeah.
I wrote it down, but knowing me, I'll forget before the end of the show.
Sound like me.
Down here in Florida, I did some extensive research into the skunk ape headquarters for one of my books coming out later this year. And one thing I found interesting was their legend has it that the reason why they stopped researching was because the government came in and threatened him and told him he had to shut down his operation. Have you guys ever encountered anything along those lines, or does the cryptid community have something like the Men in Black have for UFOs?
Are we talking David Sheehy by chance?
Yes.
Yeah. We'll put that aside. The issue I have with, I'm not a conspiratorialist. I try to be logical as I can about this, and here's the problem. I think that it's inevitable that these things are going to be found. Some sort of solid, forensic proof they're going to be found. It might be somebody comes across the carcass of one, or somebody, accidentally hits one with the logging truck. Who knows? But the bottom line is the government. Let's just pretend the government has this study group or whatever that their whole job is to keep any information about Bigfoot undercover. Well, here's the issue. People find this evidence all the time in very remote areas. I mean, far beyond where people generally go. And for you to believe that the government, if you were to obtain a body and the government would take that away from you or just try to shut you down verbally, but you would have to then assume that there is a government agent hiding behind every rock and tree throughout the forest across the country, ready to pounce on your evidence the second you trip over it. And just on the face of it, it's ridiculous. If they can't control that. Now, if it comes out publicly, if somebody goes to the media with it, which chances are they may very well, then yeah, the government might then be able to act, but the cat's out of the bag. The forensic evidence has been seen, or maybe they've secreted away part of that evidence if they're smart, to maintain a sample. But the government isn't going to be able to control it if and when that day happens where somebody, a common person, any one of us goes out and finds something, substantial forensic evidence. There's nothing the government can do to step in and stop you from taking it to the press, or for trying to sell it on the market, or for taking it to a university, which personally is what I would do. I had an SOP with Dr. Richard Greenwell from the International Cryptozoology Society. Unfortunately, he's since passed, but I've still got this write-up somewhere in a moving van between Oregon and here. Here we go again. But I've got the whole standard operating procedure he's put in place that we would transport this thing in a refrigerated van, and it would go down to an undisclosed, well, to you guys, university that is willing to and standing by to accept this species and put a lid on it to where until the research is done, nothing will be made public about it, and it'll be too late. And that's my thing. There's just, and to what end, I guess, is where I end up with this theory about the government trying to hide any evidence about this.
I think they have your van.
What's that?
Yeah.
I said, I think they have your van.
Yeah, right.
Your moving truck.
It's been
Probably going
confiscated.
through it as we speak. Yeah. Boy, they're going to be surprised. No, no. But the thing is, it's not realistic to think that they're going to be able to control any sort of circumstance where somebody comes across this and what they do with it, and whether they can get on top of it and put a lid on it before it ever gets out to the public. Because I pretty much assure you that most people that have a good solid evidence are going to go right to the press with it, and then it's on the news. It's there. It's kind of hard to put the genie back in the bottle at that time. Mm-hmm. But again, to what end? If it's inevitable, they're going to be found, and there's no way they can control whether or not you or I go out there and find something like that. Then trying to pretend it doesn't exist doesn't make sense to me, because even if they do know about it, they're not going to be able to do anything about it. So, I kind of look at this whole UFO UAP thing right now. Now they finally came out with they finally just said, well, there's just too much out there that we can't pretend that we don't notice. And we've all seen the results over the past year or so with some of the stuff that's been coming out. It's the same kind of thing. I think there's going to be a tipping point where the government is just going to go, all right, it's ridiculous to think that tens of thousands of people are experiencing, seeing certain things, and that we are just completely in the dark about it. Of course they're not. But I think there too, when you put it, you got to put yourself in their shoes. If you put it on a scale and you got choice A or B, the blue pill or the red pill, the blue pill is you go forward with it, and all of everything. So I'm going to sound like I'm contradicting myself, and I'm not. Everything that you know about it becomes public, and all of the consequences that go with that, versus the red pill, shut up. We don't say anything. We continue to collect our evidence. They're not hiding it per se, but they're looking at, as any government would, is what are the consequences of going forward with it and opening a huge can of worms, and with all the ramifications, and we can go on about different scenarios, or B, don't say a damn thing. There are no consequences for that. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So if I were in that position, I'd have a tendency to say, do I want to create a controversy and upset the norms of society by throwing this out there? Or if I just keep my mouth shut for now, there are no consequences for that. Not for them anyway. That's just my take on it. But I don't believe the government is intentionally sitting on information for any other reason that it just opens up Pandora's box. That, again, the other alternative is say nothing and let things be the status quo, the norm.
Mm-hmm. That's what they do.
Yeah.
Keep everybody in their little cage.
No, just let things go the way they're going and,
Yeah.
and not rock the boat if you don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
What's the questions, Heather, you got from
Yeah.
the listeners, viewers?
Get back to that screen. Hold on. There we go. Okay. Robin says, I have the opportunity to investigate Medoc Mountain State Park in North Carolina. Lots of Squatch sightings. What would be your best advice for someone new at this going to investigate during the day?
Take someone with you.
Yeah.
Don't go alone.
Document everything, video or audio, even if it's just your phone. Put an audio recorder on, because you're going to get audio if you hear something, if you see something. Pretty easy, just way to do that. And then take notes. If you see something, mark down where it is, when it is. I make sure, to the earlier point of photographic evidence, that on my phone, my GPS is turned on. So any photo I take is pinpointed so that I know where it was and how to get back to that location and stuff.
And so do we. I'm kidding. No, I say go in with an open mind, but on the same token, again, go with that filter that eliminate every other possibility for whatever experience or evidence, sound, visual, whatever you see. If try your darndest to associate it with another animal, what have you. And then once you've eliminated that, then maybe you've got something. But even such things as these tree structures, you've got to eliminate wind phenomena, weather phenomena, ice and snow that build up on trees can make them do all kinds of crazy things when they break apart.
Mm-hmm.
So look at surrounding trees in the area and see if there isn't similar damage done. I've spotted in 30 years 4 quote unquote tree structures in my life that I consider legitimate. And in those cases, nothing else in the area was disturbed. Nothing.
Yeah.
Just it was very localized and it was very engineered. It was very easy to tell. But I would say to your listener to keep your mind open, look for anything out of the ordinary, investigate it, and like Barnaby and Rez all said, document. And then again, like any good experiment, try to repeat that experiment a little bit later. Go back and take those extra pictures. Check into other databases, see if any other researchers have had similar occurrences or similar finds in that same area. When I got here to Arkansas, I'm like, oh boy, I went from Bigfoot Central, the Pacific Northwest, to Mid-America, and I really had no idea how much activity was here till I got onto some databases. And from this ranch we have up here in the Ozark Mountains, I found 18 sightings within 40 miles of our ranch here. When I got back to Oregon, somebody sent me a 19th one that was incredibly close to this ranch. So look into what else other people have done. Look at databases, look for similarities. But again, keep an open mind, but at the same time, try to eliminate any other possibility.
One of the things I do every time we go out with the team, I set the intention of wanting to have the interaction, wanting to have something to do with with the Bigfoot or the experience. And when you set the intentions out there, sometimes things come back. That comes with that open mind.
Yep.
I've got a question about, do you have any rules, like when you go out, like no cologne, no aftershave, things like that I would, their sense of smells, if they smelled, Calvin Klein cologne on a guy, they're going to like, what I'm saying? I would think they'd be really attuned to smells and things with, being an animal like that.
If you go out,
I think they do have a heightened sense of smell, but you're dealing with a whole different animal. I dare say a whole different relic hominid, which puts them in a little different category than the common animal. Yeah, if I'm deer hunting, I don't even wash my pants or my hunting gear in regular detergent because of the phosphorus that's in the laundry detergent. Deer can see UV light, and phosphorus puts that out. You use scent blockers. You use all kinds of things like that. In a case with this species, don't kid yourself that they don't know you're there long before you do, and that's a no-brainer. They're not, if you go out there with a bunch of perfume on, it might actually attract them. They might go, that's an unusual smell, I'm going to investigate it. You go out there, a lot of people try to camouflage yourself, try to hide. Trust me, they know you're there. And the more you try to hide that, the more I think cautious they're going to be. You go about your regular activities during the day. Sit yourself in an area where you've had numerous fairly recent encounters, and just go about your way as if you're totally ignoring them, as if you're not out there trying to track them down. Yeah, you're observing, you're looking for evidence, certainly, but number one, you're not going to be able to run these things down. If they don't want you near, you're not going to get close. I think it's a matter of getting out there and just presenting a very benign posture, a very very natural activities that they've already observed. I think they know more about us than we do about them. I'm certain of that. But they know more. They know we go out there. The common person's going to go out there, and they're going to be jamming their stereos out there. They're going to be maybe even shooting guns. They're used to that. But if they want to investigate you, they will. And I don't think there's a whole lot you can do to try to block your scent or camouflage yourself. That's really going to make a whole lot of difference.
Well, do you think they're vegetarian or meat eaters? I mean, I've never heard what the theory is on that. What you think they eat?
Omnivore, both.
I would agree.
Depends on what season it is. They're going to be more apt to eat, plants and stuff when they're in season, and then more meat when it's not in season during the winter and stuff when they can't forage for the other foods. So opportunistic omnivores. Yep.
So if you go out and hang some steaks around your neck, I mean, that might help. I mean, experiment. Cook some hamburgers. Would they be, like a bear?
You first, Philip.
I'd say bears do exist, Philip.
Gonna slather yourself with bacon grease and
something will come find you. Yeah.
Something will.
I've heard that if you just have a good time around a campfire and cook bacon and spam and just ignore them, they'll come quicker than anything. Like what Todd just said.
These things are very, very curious about us. I mean, imagine how their culture was disrupted when Native Americans showed up on the scene in North America roughly about 21 to 23,000 years ago. Now we've been able to determine that Homo sapiens have been in North America. And these things have probably been there 4 or 5 million years. And yet here comes this influx, this immigration of small hairless versions of them. But hey, these things know how to build some pretty fancy structures. They have they've learned to cultivate crops. They've learned to domesticate animals. They've learned to they've got religious ceremonies. I mean, it must have been fascinating for them during that period, 20 plus thousand years ago. And they've learned to live symbiotically with the Native Americans. That I can assure you.
We actually lived hand in hand with them back in the day.
Sure.
Most of our tribes did and interacted, and they'd come to different ceremonies. So it was a natural relationship.
Very, very symbiotic, but it took time to culture that relationship, I'm sure. But now think about how long Europeans have been here. We're talking 300 years or less. That if the incursion of the Native Americans coming in 20,000 years ago was a shock to their system. Imagine what the last 300 years have looked to these last generations of them. I mean, it'd be tantamount to aliens coming in and taking over. This was a whole new breed of humans that came on the scene, and how quickly things changed, which is why I think they retreat the way they do. They want to live a very simple
survive.
They want to live a simple life, and that's their thing, and they should be allowed to do that. But they still find human beings very fascinating, and trust me, there's a lot more of them checking us out than there are of us checking them out. It's just, yeah.
I want to ask this movie. Most of you guys are too young to even remember it, but God, in the 70s, I was terrified to even leave the screen door open at night because I knew this thing was going to be standing at the back door. But the Legend of Boggy Creek.
Yeah.
Do you guys know that movie?
Mm-hmm.
And they call it the Falk Monster.
Falk, Arkansas.
Yeah,
I've been down there. Actually, I've been to Boggy Creek here just a couple of years ago, and I'm heading back there in April. The Falk Monster. There's a Falk Monster festival coming up in late April down in Falk, Arkansas. Yeah.
Is that another term?
I remember it. I am that old. I'm just saying.
I mean, it scared the crap out of me when I was a kid. Because we just went to bed with the screen door closed, I just knew that thing was going to be standing on the back porch one day.
Well, everybody knows the screen is going to slow them down, too.
Yep.
Oh,
the primate's greatest adversary, the screen.
I think I might shut the door.
Yeah, it's going to keep the criminals out, too.
Did you lock the little metal hook first?
Of course.
That keeps everything out.
That would do it.
Did you forget to lock? You forgot to lock the hook.
The windows open and just a screen. So, oh yeah, it's gonna be safe.
You're old, Philip.
You couldn't keep the possum out of the screen going in.
First it was that, and then Amityville Horror. I was like needing therapy by the time I was junior high.
Yeah, I don't know how our generation survived with all of that.
Paranormal Activity made me scared of the ice maker.
Blair Witch.
I about crapped my pants the first time I saw the ice maker watching Paranormal Activity.
Or Destination, or what was it? Final Destination. I still can't drive behind a logging truck.
Oh God, yeah.
We went on a class trip right when that movie came out. the airplane one, man. Mm-hmm. Nobody want to be on that airplane. No, we'll drive. We're going to Arizona from Alabama. Nah, take a bus.
The one that got me back in the day was Phantasm. Could never look at the cemetery the same for the longest time.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Classics.
Yeah. Or the B movies. I know when we had Blake Best on last October, we talked about like the Toxic Avenger.
Yes.
I know we're getting off topic, but yeah, all of those, what were considered horror back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
There is no topic.
You got another question
podcast.
from.
We do have a couple more.
Okay.
There was another question that I had, but I completely lost it. I'll remember it in a little bit. But Jerry asked, considering TV shows, do you feel they are accurate? I believe in a species that comes and goes, but don't know where they go.
I think it's all the way that the show is portrayed. It's money. They're trying to be entertaining, and even if the stuff that they're getting on the show is evidence, is accurate, it looks fake and stuff because they have to film it from 3 different angles and over again. Now pretend that you're excited again, and it just gets so watered down and stuff. If there is anything accurate on there,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the genre today and any of these really, unfortunately, turning into reality shows, they're so predictable. And, I've turned down more shows than I've ever accepted because I learned early on what they can do in an editing room and things they can make it appear that you say that you didn't. And so I'm very careful about any sort of productions I ever get involved with. But yeah, it's build. Oh my God, go to commercial. and then you come back, they rerun the last 5 or 10 seconds, and it's nothing.
Yeah.
Crickets. And it doesn't matter if it's a ghost show or it's some gold miner show or survival show or Bigfoot show. They all run that same
formula.
Same formula, you know. And Barnaby's right. It's you follow the money, right? So the end money is advertising. Advertising's based what they pay to advertise based on ratings. Ratings are based on sensationalism, and you just go downhill from there. And so, you know, there's not a lot of people out there that are taking a really hard, serious look at the phenomena and giving it fair treatment because they're trying to sell products. That's Peter Byrne would tell me. They're trying to sell soap, and they're making millions of dollars. You know, it's like, yeah, you're right. So you gotta kind of, you know, when you go 5 years not finding Bigfoot, you're doing something wrong. You know. So
after hearing all the interviews I've done, I can't stand to watch those shows anymore. Like it gives me cringe. Like, dude, what? I can't even watch 5 minutes of them.
Yep. Yeah. And I actually remembered my question. In paranormal, the woo-woo, I guess is what you guys are calling it, end of it. There's a lot of theories behind that these different triangles on Earth contribute to high amounts of activity, such as Alaska Triangle. Nevada has one. I know we have one here in Florida. And then there's also the Bermuda Triangle. Have you guys noticed
there's one
anything?
in Lake Michigan, too.
Yeah, and I think there's one in the Northeast.
That's the Bridgewater at the Massachusetts.
Yes, that's the one. Yeah, but any, you know, I want to get out in the Bermuda Triangle and do research anyway. But, you know, any increase in cryptid activity in any of those areas?
Well, the Bridgewater one, I think, has a lot of activity just because it's so remote. You know, you're looking at an area that there isn't a lot of people to begin with. And anytime that you have an area, you know, you're talking about the native reservations and stuff, you're talking about the different triangle areas up in Alaska and stuff. You have these areas where there aren't people. So you're going to have higher collections of creatures that don't want to be found. And I think the biggest misconception is pinning one phenomenon onto another phenomenon. You know, when people are going out in the woods looking for Bigfoot and you see a ball of light, people think that the ball of light is associated with Bigfoot. And who knows what that thing is? It could have nothing to do with Bigfoot. It's just a ball of light that you saw out there. There's so much out in the world that we don't understand. We don't have in a little bottle that we can, you know, test and figure out that when you go out there, you're trying to associate all these different phenomenon with each other, and they don't necessarily have to be connected at all.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I know in the Nevada Triangle, the little bit of research I did on that versus in the cryptid world is, you know, of course, with Skinwalker Ranch was just outside of that triangle. Area 51 fell almost in the center of the triangle, and you kind of had all of the different sightings in those areas.
There's nothing else.
Why is it always a triangle, though? Why can't it be like a Bermuda octagon
or something?
You know?
Right.
The triangles actually aren't really triangles either if you actually point on a map. So it's completely arbitrary to call it that. But
I think the Bermuda started it. And it sounds posh to call it any kind of crazy area. The triangle.
The pyramid shape is mystical too.
The Bermuda trapezoid.
I've got a question, Bruce, before I forget it, Heather. The vocalization that you guys record and things of the Bigfoot, do you think they're communicating with each other, or what meanings do they have? Any ideas on that?
I think they're communicating with each other, kind of warning each other that, you know, there's humans by.
Yeah.
Or they're calling to each other to bring each other closer. Just a communication with themselves in general.
I don't have any doubt that they have a language, and that language, you know, birds have language. You know,
dolphins,
you can listen
whales.
to songbirds. They'll sit there and make up their own repeated tune. So repetition is key to language. And I'll give you a good example. I was invited to do some field research on the Omaha Reservation in eastern Nebraska, right on the eastern border of Nebraska, and I spent a week with the Omaha tribe, and we had not only this eye shine thing that I had put in the supernatural basket, and that's what I was referring to when I said I had my butt handed to me, because I spent 5 nights in a row, mind you, in 2 different locations on that reservation from midnight to 2 or 3 in the morning sometimes, and we had consistent, not only the eye contact, which I've got some theories I'm working on to explain that. It's not generated light, but I'll leave that for later. But there was the vocalizations that came with it, that they're so varied and interesting, and I'm sure they each have meaning. And again, I have to associate repetition with language, right? So the first night we were out there was a Monday night, midnight, and almost immediately after my host had called out to them, he would call out "Aho kage," which means "hello, friends," and he had established this and developed this relationship over about 3 years by the time I got out there, and he convinced me that he could literally call them in. But the eye shine itself wasn't the thing. It was his vocalizations. And that first night we were there, it was probably 30 minutes into it, I heard this very high pitched, very loud vocalization that the only thing I can attribute it to is a song. It was 5 to 6 seconds long, but this 5 or 6 second, very loud, very high pitched song, lyric, whatever you want to call it, chorus, would change in volume. It would change in tone. It would change in rhythm in just 5 or 6 seconds, and then it would stop. And it was almost beautiful, to be honest with you. It sounded like a song, kind of. And then 10, 15 seconds later, started up again. And again, the same duration, 5 to 6 seconds, the same notes, the same rhythm, the same crescendos, whatever. She did this 4 times within about a minute. All of them were 5 to 6 seconds long. They were all exactly, not one note off. They were all exactly a repeat. That we're not talking some arbitrary yell, scream, roar, growl, whatever. We're talking a language, because it repeated itself 4 times in a minute, and that speaks volumes in terms of intelligence. And you know, you look at some of the stuff that Ron Moorhead recorded back in the 70s from the Sierra Sounds. I put together an expedition in 1998 with Ron Moorhead and Peter Byrne as my teammates, and we were not far from where I had my sighting in '93, 5 years earlier. And Ron brought all these recordings they made in the Sierra Sounds were on cassette tape back in the day. He brought a shoebox with all the original, like probably 24 cassette tapes. And I had the privilege to sit down and listen to those with headphones. I'm telling you, what he's put out and what you've seen in the 2 different releases he's put out is not even 5% of what they got. You know, he just had to kind of pick the greatest hits and go with what he thought might be interesting to people. But I clearly heard repetitions of certain words and phrases throughout a lot of those recordings that I had the privilege to listen to. I do think they have a number of ways to communicate. I do think they communicate amongst each other, both verbally and this whole concept of the tree knocking thing. I think people are getting it wrong, to be honest with you. Just my opinion over the years. I think this tree knocking is a very, again, personal opinion, is their way of alerting other. It's a very subtle thing, but it's their way, I think, of alerting other Sasquatch, Bigfoot, in that area that humans have entered the area. So it's I mean it's counterproductive for people to go out there and start beating on trees or knocking sticks together, because all they're doing is saying, yeah, the humans are here.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, it
so
depends if you
but
want
again,
them to know that you're there. You know, if they're
but
curious.
again, it's a form of communication. It's whether it's
Morse code
verbal
with trees.
or,
Yeah.
you know.
You know, I
Do you
actually
ever- Oh, go
know
ahead.
the tribe you're referring to, and the gentlemen that took you out. Friend of mine, and actually, how that came to be with them going out and speaking their native tongue was their elders basically told them, "You go out there, you speak your native tongue," and because they've had interaction for all these, hundreds of thousands of years, they understand their language, and that got me thinking with the different reservations. I've talked to other people, and there was I believe it was Sasquatch girls or something like that had their Ojibwe. They're out doing an investigation of their own, and they actually had Ojibwe come back to them, some stuff from the Ojibwe language. So that puts me on the theory that, when you go into these different areas, the Squatches in that area are going to understand the native tongue for that region. So, like, if I went back up to upstate New York, where the Mohicans are originally from, and I spoke our language, they should be able to understand what I'm saying. Or in Wisconsin, up in the Northwoods where we're at in our local area now, at one point in time was a lot of Menominee. So if someone was to go out and speak Menominee, chances are they'd be getting a response back also.
So Rez, you probably appreciate this more than others.
Yep. I do. I've been invited out there several times already.
You should go. It's
planning on it.
It's an amazing experience.
Do you ever use any of these vocalizations on loudspeaker in the woods in any of your experimenting? See if they respond or anything?
We've tried it, but Barnaby does it so much better than the speaker that I think it's better with a live vocal cords.
Yeah, there's also a vibration and a frequency related to speech and voice, and maybe that's being transmitted also.
The big issue is if you're repeating something from a recording or whatnot, you really ought to consider the message contained therein, and you don't know what you're putting out there, and you got to start somewhere. But it's it's hard to say what it is that you're saying, and you hope you're saying the right thing.
Hope it's not a mating call.
Could
be. Yeah, right.
Be a fun night.
There's always that one. There's always that.
But I mean, it's better than nothing. It's better than nothing. I mean, if we know what they sound like, then trying to emulate that is about the best we can do at this point.
Yeah, I can actually see Rez writing down something in the native tongue and then giving it to Barnaby to say, and then he's in the background laughing because of what he made him say.
I'm not that mean.
It's like the Squatch version of Bart calling Moe's Tavern.
Right?
Need a man to hug and kiss.
One of the last times I went out, we actually tried something different because a lot of the people on my team don't do calls, like they either smoke or don't have the volume to do it. And I went out with somebody that could do a call as well, and we actually did a double call. So we had a third person do a countdown, and that allowed us to do a longer multi-toned call. If you have one of these creatures that has a larger lung capacity or something, there's no way that we can manipulate that on our own. But having two people do it simultaneously, and we got a response back from this. So it was definitely interesting. So something other people might want to try out as well.
Has there ever been a sighting of more than one together? It seems like all the sightings I see one. Are there any reported where they've seen more than one together? 3? Okay.
My first sighting in 1993, my first encounter with them was of 3 individuals during a military operation where we were using high explosives out in the forest of the Oregon Coast Range. Yeah, so they're very rare. multiple creatures, but in this case, 3 of them were observing our military maneuvers that we were doing. Again, there were 3 other eyewitnesses to this, and all 4 of us counted the same number and described them identically. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people running around thinking that Bigfoot is a solitary legendary beast that apparently has been around for thousands of years and travels all over the country. And it's nonsense. They're obviously a viable species. So there's got to be males and females and offspring and what have you. So, multiple sightings, as rare as they are, do happen.
Yeah, Barnaby, you were nodding your head. I think I remember we talked about a family at one time.
Yeah, I don't know per se like what the actual genders of them would be, but we had an encounter with 3 of them. That was the rock throwing in Rhinelander, and we were able to distinguish 3 individuals based on the footprints that they left, 3 different distinct sizes. So there was 3 of them in that encounter as well. And there's actually a 4th size that was about 10 minutes up the road at a different location that we were able to document as well. So within probably about a 20-30 mile radius, there was at least 4 different individuals.
Yeah. And then before we run out of time, we did have one more question. And I'm going to piggyback off of this one with a follow-up question on it. Other than Bigfoot, have there been any other discoveries with evidence that have excited you? And then if not, my follow-up would be, if Bigfoot was determined no longer to be a cryptid, what would you start researching?
Ghosts.
And this is for all of you.
Already
So
do
you
that.
take your turn answering that one.
I think,
what was the first part of that?
Other than Bigfoot, have there been any other discoveries with evidence that has excited you?
I think as far as if it was discovered as an actual species, I don't think that the interest in it would go down at all. And I don't think that the people that have been researching it, I mean, look at things like sharks. We know that they exist, and there's an entire week dedicated to them every year on Animal Planet. So I think it would just be a matter of you would have more funding, more research, more abilities to look into it.
Yeah,
it would explode.
Well, it would not be a lot of people think it'll be the end of things, but really it's going to be the beginning of a new chapter, really, when it comes to this species, like it is with any other species. And this is something people don't realize, that dozens and dozens of new species are discovered to this day every year, and we're not just talking little tree frogs or insects. We're talking some fairly substantially large animals that exist in places like the Amazon that have yet to be
he froze up.
I think he
the
froze.
government shut him down.
Bigfoot got him. The government said it's too much.
Yeah,
right.
I was going to say that.
But a species.
There he is.
He sped all up.
The other side of that coin is every year numerous species actually known species go into extinction. And that's why the conservancy that I run is predicated on getting laws on the books to protect them, because it's open season right now. So I'd rather err on the side of caution when it comes to something that's very difficult to find, that we do whatever we can to make sure that they don't go extinct as a species.
I agree.
Yep.
I mean, if they were discovered and listed as an actual species of animal, then would laws follow after that? Like, you can't go out in the woods and do this and that, and
I think it would change a lot of things. Far as the logging industries, because of their habitats. Stuff like that. Even
I think it would go a little bit farther than that these things wouldn't just be considered an animal, but more of a humanoid species.
I was about to say that they would have rights.
They would have rights, reservations, their own dedicated space and protected agents. So
I think that might be part of the reason they're keeping them under wraps. if and when they are. If and when.
I kind of agree with Barnaby on this, that I think ultimately when the truth comes out, and it's again inevitable that it will, that it will open a whole new chapter, like I said, but it's, once that genie's out of the bottle, there's no putting it back. And so a lot of your mainstream scientists that were thoroughly convinced that we had nothing like this are going to step forward and say, I knew it,
Yeah.
but,
The bandwagon.
but
Told y'all.
Yeah, then we're really going to have to ask the hard questions, like we do with any other threatened or endangered species, or species that we don't have substantial data to really even come to any conclusion as to the health of the species, whether they're declining or not. And the hard questions, pick any animal that we've discovered over the years. You're going to need to determine range, habitat, lifespan, birth, gestation periods. How many numbers or do we have a reasonable accounting for how many that might be out there, and then compare it historically to how many were there 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, so that we have a good
baseline
as to whether their species is in decline or could very well be expanding. We don't know that, but all those things are going to have to be answered, and there will be a major rush by not just local scientists but internationally to study this anew, like they never have before. But again, I just got to compare it with other creatures that have been discovered. It hasn't been the other world. Lowland gorillas were said to exist back to the year 700 with the Phoenicians sailing around Africa, but nobody believed them. And the first one that was actually captured and brought in was in the late 1800s, and the mountain gorilla even later than that. The panda didn't exist apparently until right around the turn of the century. And these things are out there. It didn't turn the world on its head, though, and I agree. This is a very unique species, and it may very well be found to be a relic hominid, such as Cro-Magnon or Neanderthal, that just simply refused to go away. The ultimate survivors that maintained a primitive lifestyle and want to be left alone. We don't know, but I don't think it's going to be over a period of time. I think it'll be considered the norm, and I think, was it Barnaby, you were talking about the establishment of possible reservations or game preserves or what have you. That may end up being the most humane thing we can do for them, is to provide them a sanctuary where they can maintain their culture and their lifestyle without interference of human interaction, unless of course they want that. Similar to what's happened with the indigenous people here.
That was a bad thing for the indigenous people when they put us on reservations.
But you have the option
out on that deal.
We're not going to get into politics. I'm just saying that I don't know of any other country in the world that went to war with any other culture, and in the end, when the dust settled, said, "Here is a large tract of land for you to continue to. You can either integrate with modern society or maintain your cultures the way you wish, and establish." There's over 100 reservations in North America. Oh, yeah, that's not the best necessarily for everybody, but it's a compromise, right?
It was basically set up so they can keep control of them.
Yeah.
So are we looking to control the Sasquatch species, or are we looking to
because
let
they'll
it
have
live?
the same options as Native Americans if they want to go off.
We
the
didn't have
reservation.
options.
No,
If
that,
they
No,
want to-
it was
if they
either
want to-
go or die.
if you want to stay in a permanent established environment and habitat, that can be provided. The option to stay there or to ultimately integrate with modern society would be totally up to individuals. These species are stereotyped too much. They're as individual as you or I, and some of them may want to, some may not. But I think at the very least we could do is to provide them an area that they can continue their culture, their lifestyle, to what they're accustomed to without being disturbed by us. I think it's the ethical thing to do.
They're not getting disturbed now by us. They haven't been for several years.
Okay.
So why change the status quo?
How do you know that? Did they tell you that?
Well, honestly, you'd think there'd be more of sightings, more active evidence if they weren't able to take care of themselves out there in the woods. Someone would have a body by now. Someone would have the evidence and come forth already, I believe.
I think you're going back to the controversy of does the government know, though? Because if they do have a body and that has happened and the government doesn't want this all to happen, then they just push it under the rug like they've done with other stuff. So,
or if they're interdimensional beings, they can come and go as they please and stay safe.
Right.
That's
Putting them on a
theory.
reservation ain't going to change nothing.
I've got another question. Is this a myth? I've heard this. I don't know, maybe from witnesses on a show or something, that there's an incredible stench that surrounds a Bigfoot, like they smell bad. Is that a myth, or is that true from the witnesses that you've seen?
I've heard it a lot.
Few sightings. It's not as common as I think people think that it is.
Okay.
Not 100%.
I know the skunk ape here in Florida is known for its stench only because it builds its nest underneath alligator dens.
Ugh.
And the stench from all the decaying stuff that the alligators bring into their dens goes down into the skunk ape's den. And it just absorbs that. At least that's the theory behind why they have a stench for that one.
Well, they do smell, and there's no question about it. I've only had one smell encounter, if you will, which trust me, that's enough. I don't want to ever smell that again. But it is as people have described it. The thing that struck me literally was we were investigating a sighting. Went in well over a mile bushwhacking the whole way to where this sighting was. We took the same route in and out. After we did our investigation, we came back out the same route, and we literally walked into a wall of smell. I won't even begin to try to understand the physics behind it, because if somebody hits a skunk in the road, you smell it long before you get there, and you smell it for a while after you pass it. And this was worse than a skunk, but there was no warning coming up to it. There was no tapering of it. It wasn't like, I think I smell something. Oh yeah, I smell something. Wow, it's getting stronger. None of that. It was like you didn't smell it, or you were in it. And I mean, to where I could walk 30 feet through it and come out the other side and not smell it. It was that focused in an area, and all three of us in the group experienced that. There was no real source for it. I have done in my research in trying to answer a lot of these questions in a book that I'm working on right now. I did find some research. A biologist that had mentioned that there's certain primates, and I don't have my notes again, they're on a moving van, but they're historically primates, certain primates do have glands. I know he mentioned that there was a gland in their forearm not so much the forearm, but really almost in the crux of the elbow, that could be released under certain circumstances. Primates. So again, going back to, can I find an example in nature of a known species that can emanate this smell? Yeah. And then the question becomes, do they do it voluntarily? Do they smell that like that all the time, or is it something that they can trigger? I would go with the latter. I think it's something that they can emit under certain circumstances and then the question is why, and how does it benefit them? Is it like a skunk, a defense mechanism, or is it a scent like deer leave on trees to attract other deer? We don't know. I can tell you it is obnoxious as all get out. Skunk smells good compared to that. It was weird as when we passed this area 30 minutes earlier, it wasn't there. This was on our way back, taking the same route that something had left this calling card right in the trail, and we just for the heck of it, we did kind of a grid search around the area just to see if there was a source anywhere, and we found nothing. But it was there, I can guarantee you. But it was just the physics of how it was so focused in one spot that you could walk away from it and not smell it, but yeah, they do smell, and there are examples in nature, specifically primates, that can trigger a scent release.
I will concur with that scent. The one and only time that I've experienced anything like that, we were walking along and you literally walked into it, and it was a very controlled spot. You could walk out of it and didn't smell it. You could walk into it and you could smell it. I can't explain it. Mine was not as pungent, I guess, as maybe yours was. It smelled kind of like a skunk, to the point where we got out flashlights. This was at night. We looked around for a skunk. Nothing was there. But that was my experience with it. And to your point on the primates and stuff, I believe it's the gorillas. And they can secrete this smell, and it is part of like a male dominance. So if they get into a territorial dispute, they will emit this scent to try and say, I'm bigger, I'm badder than you. So
it almost sounds like that phenomenon is similar to like cold spots in paranormal investigations.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it was right there and you just couldn't see it because it had just, disguised itself or slipped into the other dimension.
Exactly.
Which is my theory. Do you know, is there any theories on that they climb trees?
Oh yeah.
They do? Okay.
Especially
so maybe you should go around like this instead of like,
Well, anytime we're out with thermal, we scan the whole forest up, down, everything. So
yeah, I watch tops of the trees as much as I can when I'm out and about. When you can be an apex predator, you're gonna be watching from above anyways. You're gonna be hunting.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just my theory.
I've never heard anyone mention that before, and I was just curious if that was a thing. That they're huge, but they're huge trees also out there. So,
and who knows? Bigfoot could be watching us in the forest with his bowl of popcorn, watching us fumble around trying to find him.
The ghosts do that.
Right, exactly.
I think they are arboreal. Humans were arboreal before we learned to walk upright. Trees give you a vantage point and some protection.
And food source.
And and the foot structure is kind of set up for that as well. Whether or not you believe in the mid-tarsal break, the theory that Dr. Meldrum and Professor Krantz were big proponents of, but it looks like the foot itself has a gripping capability to some degree, which would aid in climbing trees. Again, early hominids did that. We have the coccyx bone to prove it. that's the
Mm.
literally the remnants of a tail at one time. But when humans began to walk erect, then they no longer needed to be arboreal. So I think these things do have that option, certainly.
Any thoughts on them being in caves? Has that ever been talked about?
It's been mentioned in some of the different shows and research I've seen.
Just curious.
I haven't heard too much about like people finding evidence in caves of them.
Caves,
I
okay.
know people, obviously for like shelter or something, but I don't think there's any evidence that they're living in them or, that's kind of where they're hanging out. I think they're more migratory in the areas to follow the food source. They don't have a home cave per se.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Home cave.
I can't believe it's been 2 hours already.
Yeah, I am getting so sleepy and I hate it. My
So I
coffee
hate
is
to cut-
wore off.
I hate to cut the show off, but we are out of time. But before we go,
It's been a
can
good
you
time.
guys each take a moment to tell everyone where they can find you and if you have any upcoming events that you're working on?
And where they can see evidence, because I want to go after this and
Mhm.
look at stuff. So where we can see your whatever evidence you've got out there.
Let's go first.
Top right.
I'll start, I
Top
guess.
right. Top right.
Yeah, so again, Barnaby Jones, you can find all of our stuff, Wisconsin, spelled out CAPS, CAPS, Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, and Patreon at Wisconsin Caps, and on YouTube and on Instagram it is WI Caps. And you can find all kinds of evidence and pictures and stuff on our website, which is wisconsincaps.com, and all of our videos, documentaries of everything from paranormal, UFOs, Bigfoot, all that stuff is on YouTube. And then if you're interested, you can get my book on Amazon.com, which is Bigfoot is Hidden, Hyden. And coming up this 2 weeks from now, I'll be in Baxter, Minnesota at the metaphysical thing. All my events are on the website. Click on public events and go check out, and you'll find all the stuff there.
And I also shared in the comments all the links for everything that we're sharing right now, and then the peanut butter episode link on YouTube that we talked about at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, if anybody wants to get in touch with me, I do have a website for the Conservancy as well as a Facebook page. Facebook page is just American Primate Conservancy. The website is AmericanPrimate.org. I'll warn you ahead of time. It's going over some major construction, so it's going to be a little jumbled until we get that on track. I've just, with this move and everything, I've just been tied up, which is why I put off a bunch of different
The website's
activities.
moving
I am
too.
speaking at Beachfoot in June. I'm also be speaking in July in Oregon at the Bigfoot Summer Festival in Oak Ridge, Oregon. Working on a few documentaries currently. Sasquatch Legends Meet Science 2 with Doug Hychek, and also Flash of Beauty team through Renaissance Pictures. Possible TV series coming up. I don't even know if I want to do that. We'll see how it goes. That's kind of not my thing. But I want to continue research here in the Ozark Mountains where we currently are at. So yeah, my email address, if somebody wants to just contact me directly, is American Primate at AOL.com.
Wake
And
up,
I'll have a
Bobby.
book out hopefully this
I'm,
year.
I'm writing down addresses and stuff.
Okay.
Sorry.
Watch the replay.
I'm doing work over here. Hey, I'm the Caffeinated Cryptid with Bobby Dizzle is at bobbydizzle.com. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube, of course. And I got iTunes, iHeartRadio, Amazon Podcast, Spotify, of course, It's all there on bobbydizzle.com. I got links like right there in your face, so you can't mistake them. But yeah, I got a bunch of playlists full of interview clips of my best ofs and Bigfoot podcast clips, alien clips. So I got a bunch of stuff you can go with. I've done like 200 episodes, and it's just crazy good stuff. I'm just waiting on the right person to find them all. So bobbydizzle.com if you want to listen to them while you drive, work out, whatever. It doesn't matter. Just check me out.
And what is Bigfoot's favorite coffee?
I'll tell you, probably Cactus Squatch by Black Rifle Coffee. That's some good stuff. But this is Timmy Hortons there from the Upers there.
And Rez, your turn.
All right. Just like Barnaby, catch me on the CAPS website. Otherwise, Red Road Paranormal on YouTube. That's my show. Also, you can find me on Facebook, Bobby Resnick Calkins. If you want to meet me live, I'll be in New York in 2 weeks at the Moonbow Metaphysical event up in Saranac Lake, New York. Or come out and see us for the Marionette Menominee Bigfoot Convention in June 1st. You know, that's our team convention there, and you'll see the CAPS team out there.
Almost all of us.
Yeah. It's one of the few times you can probably catch almost all of us in one room.
Yeah.
Thank y'all for joining us. I mean, this was, I learned a lot. Like I said, I knew nothing about this topic other than Legend of Boggy Creek that scared the crap out of me. So,
Yes.
it's very informative. Some of my questions may have been really amateurish, but I didn't know any of this stuff. So thanks for indulging me in my quirky questions.
Yeah. And before we close out, I do have a shameless plug for myself. I don't normally do this, but I just got my copies of my new book in. They will be released March 25th. So I'm super excited about this one. And
Who
what's
wrote
interesting
the forward for that?
This was Larry Lawson. He wrote the forward for my next book.
Okay.
So, but yeah, this one. And what's interesting is we just drove by this building this last weekend and it's gone. They've demolished it.
Oh.
So
I think the spot's still haunted.
Yeah, it is. It was actually
a cold field.
Hit by a truck twice. And they finally just let it go, and it fell apart.
Wood scraps laying around. Get them. The wood may be haunted.
I didn't even think of that. I might have to do that next time we drive by because we drive by that area every time we go to my parents' house.
Yeah, let's go see if there's some. Mm-hmm.
That's what you need. Haunted wood. Get yours.
Actually,
it's
I have a
long.
friend. He builds spirit boxes out of haunted wood, so I might have to fix them and send it to him.
Geo boxes too.
Yeah.
He builds them out of haunted wood.
It's like Ren and Stimpy. It's long. It's long. It's haunted wood.
But again, thank you guys for joining us, and thank you everyone for watching. Make sure you follow us on Facebook at Ghost Education 101. You can watch the replay and subscribe to our YouTube channel on Ghost Education 101 as well, or you can catch us live every other week on Parallax TV Network #1. We air live there as well. We will return. I'm looking forward to this one. We just attended one of his classes recently. But on March 27th, Kevin Quills will be coming back to the show to discuss why the paranormal is not psychosis. So that's going to be an interesting show. He does a lot of therapy work and helps people who've had paranormal experiences share their story, as well as deal with the trauma they may have suffered during it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Great topic.
Sounds good.
So perfect. Thank you again, guys, for joining us. And we will see everybody in 2 weeks. You all have a great night.
Thank
Had a
you.
great time. See you.
Right.
Thanks.
Oops.